Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen, Nabiyuna Muhammadun wa ala ali wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'du, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to another episode of Sira Khatam Nabiyyin, the biography of none other than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those of you who've been following the series, in the last episode or two, we had just started the key part in which the declaration of prophethood was about to take place. We were then discussing some predictions and some prophecies which had taken place beforehand, informing the people that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was due. And we focused particularly in the last episode on various verses from the Al-Quran Al-Kareem, exploring those revelation which was given to the Jews and the Christians, in which they found it within the Injil and the Torah, so that it wouldn't come as a surprise to them when the Prophet ﷺ would arrive. And it's from that point that we carry on. And we find that the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that he declared himself to be the seal of the prophets. And he mentioned also that the visions which his mother had experienced prior to his arrival. And we've mentioned these visions before. If you can cast your minds back to the earlier episodes, you'd have seen that the light or the illumination of the castles in Syria which had taken place and which had been mentioned. So Nabi Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find in a text called Dalail al-Nabuwa, which is the signs of prophethood, in which is mentioned a narration attributed to Sayyidina Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, or he was asked rather, when was it made your duty to become a prophet? When was it that you declared? And this is why you'll notice I use the word declaration, because the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet a long time before. It's just that he declared his prophethood in the world, in the earthly capacity. And Rasulullah has responded to that question by saying, I was a prophet, or my duty to become a prophet was at the time when I was between, or when Adam alayhi salatu wasalam was between being created, being made, and also when the spirit was blown into him. So you can see that this was at a very early stage in which Rasulullah was a prophet, rather than his declaration when he did so in his earthly gathering, in his earthly abode. When we mentioned the various prophecies, and these came directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the books of the Jews and the Christians, we'd also mentioned prior to that soothsayers, magicians you could say, using the accessibility which the jinnat had to be able to eavesdrop on the gatherings of angels. They'd utilize this information and inform their masters that a great man would be born, and this great man who would be born, he would be given prophethood, he would be given a status, he would have a worldly status as he would have a religious status, in which he would obviously call people towards the oneness of God and return back to the original religion, the monotheistic faith which all Anbiya had brought. And we have a particular surah which I want to recite to you, in which, and aptly it's called Surah Jinn, in which these jinnat also had opportunity to listen to the Prophet ﷺ's recitation. And it's if you go to Surah Jinn, which is the surah number 86, you'll find in there 76, or 70, losing the track of my Roman numerals now, been out of touch for a while, so it's, let me rephrase that again. So it's surah number 72, but if you go for the name of the surah, you'll find it a lot easier, which is Surah Jinn, and it's surah number 72, and it's the first two ayats which mention, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, Qul uhiya ilayya annahu istama'a nafrun min al-jinn, faqalu inna sami'na qur'anan ajaba, يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولن نشرك بربنا أحدا وأنه تعالى جد ربنا ما اتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا. Now you can see here, or you can understand from these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قل, say, أوحي إلي, it has been revealed to me that istama'a nafrun min al-jinn, that are listening to me, nafarun, a group of from the jinn. فَقَالُوا, and this was their response when they heard the Quran being recited by the Prophet ﷺ. They said, إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا. We have heard a quite wonderful and astonishing recitation or recital, because the word Quran means a recital, something which is recited, which leads us to the point that it is a book which is supposed to be recited regularly. Some may say, well, you know, if I read a book, then I don't read it again and again and again unless it's a particular book that I enjoy the story, and then I might read it a few times. What's the point of reciting the Quran all the time? That's one point that's made. Another point that's made is that, well, look, I don't understand the words in the Quran, so what benefit does it have for me if I continue to recite a book in which I don't understand? So in response to both those questions, we're misunderstanding the Quran if we're asking those questions. Because the Quran itself is the revealed words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the uncreated words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are His sifat, His quality. And when we recite it, what it does do is that it serves as a spiritual cleanser. It spiritually cleans us. It causes us to reflect. It causes us to ponder, to think a little bit. So even though we may not understand the verses, the effect that they have on our soul, the effect that they have on our heart is profound. And it's for this reason that we should recite it as often as possible. The other point to bear in mind is that you can quite easily get reliable translations of the Quran. Speak to a local scholar, speak to somebody who if it's in an English language you want, somebody who is well acquainted with the English language and well aware of the various translations which are available. And if it's an Urdu one, then likewise speak to somebody who has expertise in the Urdu language, because what you're trying to do is get that text, that translation which has been approved, because you can't really translate the Quran. What we are really trying to do is to get some approximate meanings to the verses to help us understand it better. And therefore we need to go to a reputable source, because if we don't understand the words of Arabic, if I was to now, I recited to you a couple of verses, I could say anything to you if you didn't understand Arabic. And even if you did understand Arabic, if you didn't understand classical Arabic, I could say anything to you and you'd be none the wiser. It's for this reason that we go to scholars or go to individuals that are reliable, that are accepted, that have been through some program of training, that have got some ijazah, have some sort of level of permission, have been trained by reputable and highly regarded scholars, so that we can be sure that what they've learned from them and they from their teachers can be traced all the way back to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because that's very important, having this sanad, having this link, this chain, because all these high divine sciences, these sciences of deen, these sciences of religion, are not just academic subjects. And this is sometimes we lose our way, and we just kind of put them in an academic way and sort of learn them and study them, and then eventually, as we're learning them as an academic subject, we don't put them into practice. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there is a group of jinn that are listening to you. فَقَالُوا إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا يَهْدِي إِلَى رُشْدِهِ. And what this book does, what this Quran does, is it guides towards rushd. Rushd means righteousness, correctness. فَآمَنَّا بِهِ. So we believe in it, we accept. وَلَن نُشْرِكَ بِرَبِّنَا أَحَدًا. And we will never, ever ascribe partners with our Rabb in any way. We will not. And when we mention the word ascribing partners, sometimes we get sort of a bit confused in the language as to what it's actually referring to. What it's referring to is to believe, to attribute certain qualities to somebody other than Allah, to some being other than Allah, which should only be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we're asking for sort of divine help, or we're asking for assistance of a nature which is in the future, for example, if I was to ask somebody, can you pass me that glass of water, then I could ask a human for that glass of water. But if I'm asking for good health, if I'm asking for somebody to listen to me right now, if I was in the studio and there's nobody here physically in the studio apart from the chap who's listening to the mic, then if I was to ask something, then yes, the person who can hear me may be able to. So if I said, oh, can you please get me a cup of coffee, say. But if I'm asking for something when I'm alone, then I can only ask that being that can hear in all places. I can't ask a being which can't hear in all places. And I can't ask help from a being which can't provide me that help. So if I say, oh, give me good health, then I can't ask that from anybody but Allah, because that's something in the future. That's something that I want bestowed upon me. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful. Only there is no other being that is all powerful. And this is what we mean by ascribing partners. It's not something like a verbal statement that we might make, na'udhu billah min zalik, that we say, oh, you know, this person is like a god or things of that nature. We now have a firm understanding of idol worship, the worship of statues, the worship of things. We do. But what's crept into Islam in particular is the sort of glorification of pious individuals who've passed away, or calling on great luminaries, either great shuyukh of the past or the anbiya or the angels, in such a way in which the only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be asked. So they said, وَلَن نُشْرِكَ بِرَبِّنَا أَحَدًا وَأَنَّهُ تَعَالَى جَدُّ رَبِّنَا مَا اتَّخَذَ صَاحِبَةً وَلَدًا. And then the final point they make is that we surely understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above and He is mighty, and He will not take a companion, nor will He take a child, because there's no need for Him to do so. So that's a key point that's mentioned there. Similarly, we find in ayat number 29 and 30 of Surah Al-Ahqaf, which is Surah number 46, we find a mention there again, وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنْصِتُوا فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ قالوا يا قومنا إنا سمعنا كتابا أنزل من بعد موسى مصدقا لما بين يديه يهدي إلى الحق وإلى طريق مستقيم. So again, it mentions the jinn, and the jinn that are mentioned, it says, and when we sarafna ilayka, when we turned towards you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nafaran, a group from the jinn, what for? Yastami'un al-Quran, they came to listen to the Quran. Falamma hadaruhu, so when they were present, when they were assembled around you, qalu, they said to one another, ansitu, be quiet, let's listen to this. فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ, so when you had completed the recitation, وَاللَّوْ, they turned away, إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ, they went back towards their people. مُنذِرِينَ, in what way? They went back warning them that, look, we've heard this recitation, and it's telling us what's going to happen in the future. It's telling you that if you don't accept Islam, what's going to happen. It's explaining all these things. قَالُوا, they said, يَا قَوْمَنَا, O our people, إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا كِتَابًا, we have heard a book, a revealed scripture, a text. Unzila min ba'di Musa, which has been revealed after Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. We heard a similar text when we were around Musa alayhi salatu wasalam's time. We heard a similar text. And what this text does is, musaddiqa lima bayna yadayhi, it confirms that which has already preceded it. Yahdi ila al-haq, it guides towards the truth. Wa ila tariqin mustaqim, and towards a straight path, a straight road. So here you can see two particular places in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the jinn. And in both cases you can see that Nabi Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not have power over the jinn in any way. The only Nabi which has been mentioned that had power over the jinn was Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. There's no mention here that Nabi Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had power of them. We can understand that it was through revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, informed him to say that there's a group of jinn listening to you. And in the last ayat that I recited to you, it mentions وَإِذَا صَرَفْنَا, when we turn towards you. So in both cases that is being mentioned, Nabi Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not know the jinn were there, because he has no knowledge of the unseen. He has to be informed about the unseen. Let's not get confused the two. Of course he had connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would inform him of events taking place. But this wasn't an accessibility that he had at all times at his disposal. No, it was as and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. So Nabi Allah did not have access to this. He did not know that Hamza radiallahu anhu would be martyred. He did not know certain things beforehand. He was informed about them. He was informed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this would happen on the Day of Judgment. He was informed about the munafiqun that were around him in Medina. He was informed about certain things that were going to happen. He was informed. So when he was informed about those things which were going to take place in the future, then he would share those with the people if he felt it was appropriate. He would share that initially with his Sahaba and share that with others. If it was obviously of a guidance in the sense of revelation, then without any shadow of doubt, as a messenger, it was compulsory upon him to share that. I'm talking about those matters which were happening in the world, things which would be taking place. So we can clearly see that the Prophet ﷺ did not have at his disposal, as and when he chose, at his time, access to the unseen, access to performing miracles on the bequest of any individual. What he had to do was call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would perform miracles at his hands, or revelation would come to him informing him of certain matters, like these matters regarding the jinn. In fact, the only time where the jinn are being mentioned is when the jinn would try to, before the revelation of the Quran, is when they would steal up to the heavens and try to get as much information as possible and bring that information back down to share with their soothsayers. And what happened was, closer to the time, the stars or the shooting stars were used as a means to push away these jinnat that would try to take this information. We have some discussions which take place from these soothsayers, where a woman from Banu Saham, who was known as Ghaytala, she had been a soothsayer before Islam, and she said one day, she sort of proclaimed a prophecy as such, that there's a day of slaughtering and slaying coming. So they asked, what does this mean? They weren't sure what they meant. And then on another night, she mentions ravines. Down the sides of these ravines, Kaab will fall. Again, people didn't really know what was going on here. What was she referring to? It was only at the time of Badr and Uhud that what she was mentioning actually came to light, and people drew the connection between what she had said and what had actually taken place. So these were information that were available to soothsayers, those who could control the jinnat, those who could capture them. But in order to do so, they had to literally sell their soul. They had to literally join the dark side. They had to literally become servants of the devil. They had to become, in order to gain something, because as we know, nothing in life comes free. Everything there's something to pay for, and exactly what she had to give in that particular circumstance as well. So we can see that there was this information available, both through revelation in the Injil and the Torah, of the arrival of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, explain in detail that I've already touched upon in the last episode, but also even to the mushrikeen, even to the pagans, even to the polytheists, even to those who were not people of the scripture, were not following a book, even they were aware of the arrival of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through their means, which was the soothsayers that were gathering this information as they were sort of sneaking up to eavesdrop as the angels were being informed about what was due to take place. But when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived, what we see is a change taking place. But prior to the arrival of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we noticed that there was some great trouble between the Ahli Kitab and also the polytheists. And this was actually a driving force for many individuals to accept Islam. It mentions that at that time, the polytheists, the pagans, used to obviously worship idols. And the Jews at that time, because there was only small communities of Christians within the Arabian Peninsula, but there were sizable communities of Jews in the Arabian Peninsula. So the direct contact that the mushrikeen had, or the Arabs had before the arrival of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was with the Jews. And there was obviously enmity between them for obvious reasons. polytheists and Ahli Kitab, monotheists and polytheists. They had differences. And they would say to us, they would always say to us that, look, and whenever we used to get the better of them, because the numbers, in terms of the numbers game, the polytheists were always more than the monotheists. So they would always win the day, they would win the battles, and the Jews had to sort of bide their time and live for the moment. And they would say that a time is near for a prophet to come. He will be sent, and with him we will kill you, just as Ad and Iram were destroyed. So they would be hoping for this prophet. They would be expecting his arrival. So it was quite unique and strange and quite absolutely obscure and beyond reason that when the Prophet arrived, that the Jewish people in fact were the first people who did not accept him. And the people, the mushrikeen, who some of those who later then became, or the polytheists, some of them later became Muslims, said, we believe that the Jews would be the first people that would have accepted Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we have a particular verse here, which I will recite to you in Surah Baqarah, which is the second surah, and it's ayat number 89, which actually discusses this very point. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولما جاءهم كتاب من عند الله مصدق لما معهم وكانوا من قبل يستفتحون على الذين كفروا فلما جاءهم ما عرفوا كفروا به فلعنة الله على الكافرين. It mentions that وَلَمَّا جَاءُمْ كِتَابٌ, and when the book came to them, the book meaning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, min indillah, مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعْهُمْ, and it confirmed that which they already had. So it didn't come to, to challenge. In the bulk of it, many of the things which were contained within the original, with the Injil and with the Torah, were absolutely the same. There were changes which obviously the Jewish people and the Christian people had made that had happened from translation to translation, as it was an oral tradition passed from individual to individual. There was no way of safeguarding it, no way of protecting it. So stories crept in, misunderstandings crept in, until eventually there were things being ascribed to the Anbiya which was absolutely beneath them, absolutely incorrect. There were certain types of understandings now being read into the particular verses. So the concept of Father, Allah being Isa's, God being Jesus' father, that kind of was misunderstood, what it actually meant, what is it referring to, how was this what was this addressing, and we started to see these sorts of things come in. So in the bulk of it, there was an acceptance, but with the new Sharia, new obviously rules came through, but also the key point which came through was to challenge some of the misunderstandings which had existed, or some of the mistranslations, or the misinterpretations, or the actual intended changes which were made by some people. وَكَانُوا, and they were from before, يَسْتَفْتِحُونَ, they were asking for help, they were asking for assistance, they were praying for victory against those people who do kufr. And they were asking, Ya Allah, send this last prophet. Send this last prophet so the monotheists can have their day again. You've promised this last prophet. You mentioned that one more prophet would come. We find his identity and his description within our books. We're expecting his arrival. When is he to arrive? They were asking, يَسْتَفْتِحُونَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ. So when he actually arrived, when their dua was accepted, when he arrived on the scene, ma arafu, that which and they saw the signs in him, they recognized him, they knew who it was. Instead of saying, Alhamdulillah, shukran, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're very grateful for the fact that you've sent that promise, that dua that we asked for, you've accepted that dua and he's come. What did they do? Kafaru bih. They disbelieved in him. They did not accept him. They denied him. فَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ إِلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends curses against those people who do not accept his message. And there's another narration which is mentioned by Imam Bayhaqi, which here again the Jews would say to the mushrikun that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a prophet and he will judge between us and the people, and you will see we will be granted victory because of him. So they took great pride in the arrival of this prophet. And even when the Jews of Khaybar were battling, fighting against Khatam, whenever the battle was joined, the Jews would lose again because of the numbers, but they would always turn to prayer. And the Jews would turn to Allah, they would turn to God, and they would say, Oh Allah, we ask you by Muhammad's righteousness, the Prophet, the Ummi, the unlettered one, whom you promised to us, you will send at the end of time if you will give us victory over them. So this Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was actually the answer to their prayers. He was the answer to their prayers, and he should have been should have been the first people to have accepted him. But it didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that. And we see, for example, in this situation, that people, obviously the Jews would talk about resurrection. The Jews would talk about the day of judgment. The Jews would talk about reckoning, scales, paradise, hellfire. And what would happen is the mushrikun would object and laugh at that. I'd like to share with you that particular situation of how that, what actually happened when the Prophet ﷺ arrived. And I'd also like to share with you a great Sahabi, Salman al-Farsi radiallahu anhu, and how he became a Muslim and his interactions with some Christians that he had. But we've run out of time again, so I hope you can join me for the next episode, in which I will be able to take up my discussions from that very same point. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.